In the far west, within the boundless sand sea. Boundless sand sea is just like its name, with sand as the sea, boundless. The sand sea environment is harsh, and there are very few places suitable for human habitation, and only a few desert oases can accommodate human habitation and survival. Yukon Lake is one of the few habitable desert oases in the boundless sand sea. The oasis is more than 100 miles long from east to west, and more than 70 miles wide from north to south. It is high in the east and low in the west. There is a mountain named Yukon Peak in the east. The mountain is hundreds of meters high. Yukon Lake. Yukon Lake covers an area of more than 10 square kilometers. The lake water comes from an underground river. The water volume is very large. The water is clear and sweet and can be directly drunk. The 100,000s of human beings and countless birds and animals in the oasis of Yukon Lake are all supported by the clear water of this lake. And Yukon Joe is the owner of Yukon Lake Oasis. The first person who discovered the Yukon Lake Oasis was Joe Yukon, the ancestor of the Joe clan in Yukon. Today, the 100,000 people living on this oasis are all from the Joe clan who are related to the Joe clan in Yukon. The Joe family in Yukon is a family of immortals. Its ancestor Joe Yukon was trained under the Huangs Hemen of the Xiaoxian sect. He resigned from the sect more than 200 years ago, and established the Joe family in Yukon Lake Oasis. Now it has gone through 7 generations. To this day, Joe Yukon, the ancestor of the Joe family, has long since passed away, but after more than 200 years of development, the Yukon Joe family is now a powerful man with 1 foundation building cultivator, dozens of key training cultivators, and more than 100,000 vassal mortals. Xiaoxian family. Ordinary Joe clan people mainly live in the 3 small towns in the Yukon Lake Oasis, either cultivating fields or herding cattle and sheep, living a self-sufficient and carefree life. As for the immortal practitioners of the Joe family, they all live together on the aura-rich Yukon Peak. Yukon Peak itself is a natural spiritual vein of the 2nd rank high grade. After more than 200 years of cultivation by the Joe family, it has now been promoted to the 3rd rank middle grade, which can be used by several foundation building cultivators and hundreds of key training cultivators. Zhou Yang is the 6th generation of the Yuan cultivator of the Yukon Zhou family. Yehuaming Guang, Xianyuan Guangtong, Fuse Rongsheng, and Evergreen, these 16 character names were personally drafted by Zhou Yukon, the founder of the Yukon Zhou clan. The Zhou clan can only be included in the genealogy after their spiritual roots have been detected and they have the qualifications for cultivation. There are 15 people in the Yukon Zhou family with the character Yuan, and Zhou Yang ranks 9th, but in terms of cultivation, he is the first of the 15 people. At this time, he, a well-known little genius in the Zhou clan, was sitting cross-legged in a natural cave on the mountainside of Yukon Peak, with his eyes closed, pinching the magic with his hands, and going all out to absorb and train. The milky white ley line aura emanating from the cave is transformed into it. The spiritual energy of the earth pulse is a kind of essence chi bred by the combination of the spiritual pulse and the earth pulse. However, it is difficult to nurture the spiritual energy of the earth veins. It can only be bred in some special places where the earth veins and the spiritual veins meet. The entire Yukon Peak can only be bred in the Yuyang cave where Zhou Yang is at this time. As for the spiritual energy of the earth veins nurtured in the Yuyang cave, the amount generated every 10 years can only be used by a Qi training cultivator to break through, and it is only valid for cultivators below the 7th level of Qi training. Therefore, among the dozens of Zhou clansmen in the Qi training period, only a few outstanding clansmen can use the earth vein aura to make breakthroughs during the Qi training period. Zhou Yang's ability to use Yuyang cave to make a breakthrough is of course related to his identity as the first person in the Yuan generation, otherwise his father is the 6th elder of the Yukon Zhou clan, and the Yuyang cave opens every 10 years. It's never his turn to use it as a 17-year-old boy. You must know that among the dozens of people in the Zhou clan at the Qi training stage, there are quite a few people who have been waiting for this opportunity for a decade or two. At this moment, Zhou Yang was sitting cross-legged, breathing evenly, inhaling and exhaling evenly, and every time he inhaled, the milky white earthly meridian spirit energy turned into two misty spirit snakes and penetrated through his nostrils, which he refined into his own mana. In this way, when the amount of milky white earth vein aura in the cave was reduced to less than 30%, Zhou Yang's closed eyes suddenly opened, and his shoulder-length hair fluttered behind him automatically without wind. Doubled. Seeing him stand up, he muttered to himself with joy on his face, "Finally, I have broken through the 6th level of Qi training, and the earth vein spiritual Qi really lives up to its reputation. This time, it has saved me at least 3 years." At the age of 17, he has practiced the 6th level of Qi. Even in a sect of cultivating immortals like Huang's Hemen, only a few elite disciples with high-grade spiritual roots can achieve such a level of cultivation. And Zhou Yang's spiritual aptitude is actually only of medium quality. The patriarch said that I may have some kind of special treasure, so the speed of my cultivation is far faster than that of monks with the same qualifications. Unfortunately, the detection of treasure is difficult. Only the great sects like Huang's Hemen can detect it through the secret method. Although my Zhou family is a vassal of Huang's Hemen, it is impossible to ask Huang's Hemen to help detect the treasure, unless I am willing to join Huang's Hemen. But once you join Huang's Hemen, you will be bound by Huangshemen's sect rules, and there will be countless more seniors who can yell at you. How can I come from the clan now? Comfortable. Humph, there is a saying that I would rather be a chicken head than a phoenix tail. The Huang's Hemen family has a great career, and there is no shortage of geniuses with high-quality spiritual roots. Elite disciples, the benefits they enjoy may not be as good as they are in the Zhou clan today. At least the elders here are looking forward to my success in building a foundation in the future, and the lintel of the gate is all for me wholeheartedly. Besides, as long as I successfully build the foundation, the treasure body will naturally awaken and derive the treasure body's supernatural powers. At that time, I will naturally know what kind of treasure body I have. Zhou Yang is not an ordinary person. He is a reborn person whose soul came from the earth world. He has more than 20 to 30 years of past life memories than ordinary people. Although most of the past life memories of the past 20 to 30 years cannot be used in this immortal world due to the very different world environment, some of the methods, experiences, and principles of dealing with the world are available to all worlds. Others only saw Huangshemen's prestige, with Jindan ancestors sitting in the town, and dozens of desert oasis vassals like Yukwan Lake Oasis outside. Become one of them. But I don't know that although the benefits of the sect are good, the rules are equally strict. Once you enter the sect, you can't help yourself. Ordinary disciples in the Qi training period have to complete the tasks assigned by the sect every year. Treatment: in severe cases, abolish the cultivation base and expel the teacher from the door. In addition, there are serious sects in the sect. In order to show themselves in front of the higher-ups of the sect, or to compete for the right to use some spiritual lands, the low-level disciples are all trying their best to suppress their competitors. The competition is very fierce. The ancestor of the Zhou clan was a monk at the foundation building stage of Huang's Hemen. The information about Huang's Hemen is recorded in the clan classics. Therefore, all Zhou clan members, unless they are not qualified for their spiritual roots, want to fight. Otherwise, no one would be willing to become a disciple of Huang's Hemen. Zhou Yang was very tired of that kind of office fight in his previous life. He finally had the opportunity to get rid of that kind of fight in this life, and of course he wouldn't let himself get caught up in it again. Therefore, he had already made up his mind. Even if his life was hopeless, he would definitely not want to live a life of intrigue all day long. Innate, Qi training, foundation building, Zifu, Jindan, Yuan Ying, transcending calamity, returning to emptiness, and harmony, these are the 9 realms of cultivation. If you want to achieve real immortality, you can only be a person who is in harmony with the Dao. Dao Tianxian will do. However, as far as Zhou Yang knows, since there are immortals in this world, he has never heard of anyone who is truly immortal. The division of the 9 cultivation realms is only passed down by the legendary immortals outside the sky, and has not been verified. Therefore, for 99% of the monks, a Jindan monk with 1,000 years of lifespan is the highest pursuit of their cultivation. In this way, it is no wonder that he is unwilling to aggrieve himself to participate in those intrigues because of the illusory legend of longevity. Cultivation is also about cultivating the heart. Since the heart is unwilling to participate in the intrigue, Zhou Yang must choose to follow the heart. Just after breaking through the realm, he was excited and thought a little too much. After a while, Zhou Yang suppressed the messy thoughts in his heart and looked at the milky white earth vein aura remaining in the cave. Although every time the Yu-Yang cave is opened, the spiritual energy of the earth veins in it can be absorbed as much as possible, but since I have successfully broken through the realm, absorbing these spiritual energy of the earth veins will only help me stabilize the realm, and it will not have much effect. In this case, it's better to keep the spiritual energy of these earth veins, so that the next time the Yu-Yang cave will open a few years earlier, it will benefit other clansmen. Goods and fishing are not desirable, and it is not easy to generate the spiritual energy of the earth veins. It is too wasteful to simply use it to improve the monocultivation base. Since Zhou Yang has decided to stay within the clan to develop, of course he will not do such evil things that harm the public and private. He made a decision in his heart. When he opened the cave door and walked out of the cave, he explained the situation to the elders of the family who were guarding outside. Yu-Yang Cave is an important place of the Zhou family. It is guarded by the elders of the family all the year round. Now the one who is guarding the outside is Zhou Suanhe, a monk of the Xian generation. Yu reading www.yuuganchu.com is also Zhou Yang's uncle of the 14th clan. At this time, seeing Zhou Yang successfully breaking through and walking out from the inside, and listening to him tell the situation inside, Zhou Suanhe, who was wearing a cyan base and embroidered white crane auspicious cloud robe, suddenly nodded with relief and smiled, "Not bad. Yes, Yang you are worthy of being the most promising person in our Zhou family, you have such a big picture at a young age. If the old patriarch and eldest brother knew about this, they would definitely be very pleased." The old patriarch in his mouth is Zhou Minghan, the only foundation building cultivator in the Zhou family today, and the only remaining member of the Ming generation. The 6th elder among the 9th floor elders, the boss of the Xian generation. Zhou family cultivators, as long as they are of the same generation, are called brothers to each other, and those of different generations are called uncles and nephews. Facing the praise of Zhou Suanhe, the 14th uncle, Zhou Yang humbly said that this is what he should do as a member of the Zhou clan, and he is not proud of his identity and cultivation. This performance is seen in Zhou Suanhe's eyes, and he has a lot of high regard for this junior in his heart. At such an age, it is already rare to have a 6th level Qi cultivation base, and it is even more rare to be able to not be arrogant or impetuous, and to take care of the overall situation. Perhaps the hope of the next generation of the Zhou family will really fall on this child. Thinking of this, he remembered something again, and said quickly, "Since you have successfully broken through the realm, then go to the cave mansion on the top of the mountain to meet the old patriarch. Go see him. Is there such a thing? Then the little nephew will not disturb the 14th uncle. I would like to thank the 14th uncle for protecting the little nephew." Zhou Yang's expression changed, he immediately thanked Zhou Suanhe, and hurried to the old patriarch's cave on the top of Yuquan Peak. The Yuquan Peak, which is hundreds of meters high, has a strong spiritual energy as the height increases. Generally, it is enough for the Zhou clan to practice on the mountainside during the Qi training period. There are also comfortable palaces and pavilions for people to live in. There are also special facilities for food, clothing, housing, and transportation. Secular people take care of. Only monks in the foundation building period would stay in the monk's cave on the top of Yuquan Peak and use the rich spiritual energy there to practice. The entire Yukwan Peak is covered by a third-order mid-grade formation, Wanmu Qingtian Formation. Since this formation can absorb the spiritual energy of the grass and trees inside the formation to enhance its power, Yukwan Peak is from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain, except for those opened up. Outside the Lingtian and Linjiao garden, there are all kinds of tall trees, some of which are thousands of years old. The canopies of these towering trees are connected together, blocking the sunlight, making the temperature in the mountains several degrees lower than outside the mountains, and there are bursts of cool mountain winds passing through the forest. Cool. Zhou Yang, who was dressed in fluttering white clothes, used his lightweight spells to climb up the mountainside, and quickly climbed along the stone steps carved out between the woods, and soon reached the top of the mountain. The top of Yukwan Peak has been artificially trimmed and has become very flat. The area of the top of the mountain is only tens of acres. Because of the strong spiritual energy on it, except for the 3 monks' caves built in 3 places, the rest of the places have been opened up as spiritual medicine fields, planted with various grades of elixir. When Zhou Yang walked here, the scent of medicine mixed with the aromas of various spiritual medicines wafted into the nostrils. One sip of it made one's spirits refreshed, and the whole body's mana movement accelerated a lot. It is conceivable that if you can practice here all year round, the speed of practice will definitely be much faster than on the mountainside. But that's simply not possible. The Spirit Medicine Garden is an important place for the Zhou family. Many of the spirit medicines in it are cherished varieties that the Zhou family has cultivated for 100 or 200 years. The loss of any one is enough to make the old patriarch Zhou Minghan feel distressed for decades. Therefore, with the exception of the 2 second-order spiritual plant husbands in the clan, even a genius disciple of the clan, like Zhou Yang, who is much loved, is strictly forbidden to step half a step on the top of the mountain without being summoned by the clan leader. And the top of the mountain is not for anyone who wants to set foot in it. This is the core area of the formation I of the Wanmu Qingtian Formation. When the cultivator came, there was only one way to go. Zhou Yang, the younger son, was ordered to visit the old patriarch, and asked the elder to let him go. He stood outside the formation on the top of the mountain, bowed his hands respectfully towards the area covered by the white fog of the formation in front of him, and gave a salute. It turned out to be Xiaozhu. The patriarch has already explained it. Come in first. An old voice came from the white fog, and then the white fog in front of Zhou Yang surged, revealing a safe passage for one person to walk. Seeing this, Zhou Yang hurriedly thanked him and said, "My grandnephew thanked the 7th grandfather." Then he followed the path all the way, and finally came to a white-haired old man sitting cross-legged under a tree dozens of meters tall. The white-haired old man sitting cross-legged under this tree is named Zhou Yun, who has practiced Qi at the 9th level and is the 4th elder of the Zhou family. One of the second-order Lingzi husbands. The youngest of the Zhou family's Guang cultivators are over 80 years old, and the 4th elder, Zhou Yun, is nearly 100 years old, which is very close to the 120-year-old lifespan of a Qi training cultivator. Although the cultivator's fighting ability will not be reduced much due to the increase of age, generally speaking, those monks who are close to 100 years old in the major cultivating families who are close to the age of 100 will retire to the ancestral land of the family to spend their old age in peace, instead of encountering genocide. For a major event, no one will disturb them, the heroes who have served the family for most of their lives. In particular, Zhou Yun was still a second-order spiritual plant husband, and let him live in seclusion on the top of the mountain, just to take care of the spiritual medicines in these dozens of acres of medicine gardens. Seeing Zhou Yang approaching at this time, the old man waved his sleeves, and in front of him there was a tea table, a tea set, and a futon. "Xiaozhu, you are here to have a cup of tea with the old man," nagging. It is rare for the juniors of ordinary families to come to the top of the mountain. The patriarchs, who are higher than themselves, often retreat and practice. The old man usually stays alone on the mountain without even a word to speak, and he is too bored to panic. "Of course, I am very happy to see Zhou Yang," the most outstanding junior in the younger generation of the family, come here. Most young people may not understand the psychology of the elderly, but Zhou Yang, who has been a man of 2 generations, understands it quite well, and is willing to chat more with these elderly people without interfering with the business. It's not easy to drink a cup of the herbal tea made by Grandpa 7 on weekdays. Today, my grandnephew needs to be full. He smiled and went to sit on the futon, took the tea set and made tea. Of course, immortal cultivators are different from mortals when they make tea. The flame used to make tea is transformed by mana. It only takes a moment to make the tea boil, and there will be no smell of fireworks. After a pot of tea was brewed, Zhou Yang poured tea for the 2 of them, and couldn't wait to take up his cup of fragrant hot tea and drank it. Ordinary people drink tea like this, and the hot tea might even burn their throats, but for immortal cultivators whose bodies have been tempered by mana, this temperature is the same as ordinary people drinking warm water, and it is nothing at all. When the old man saw him drinking tea like this, not only did he not feel dissatisfied, but looked at him happily and asked with a smile, "How is it? Does this new medicinal tea make you satisfied?" After asking, he didn't wait for Zhou Yang to answer, he also took a sip from the teacup, then closed his eyes with a look of enjoyment, and said in a smug tone, "This is the dryness of the second-order elixir Xianyunko used by this old man. The leaves, plus the 20-year-old white jade ginseng whiskers, the first-order elixir scented leaf chrysanthemum and other 5 kinds of elixir, are only prepared in a total of 3 or 2. Even the tea used for making the tea is also the spirit dew just collected from those spirit medicines in the medicine garden this morning. It is indeed a good tea. No matter the taste or efficacy of this medicinal tea, Grandpa 7 is no worse than the spiritual tea that my grandnephew had drunk before. If it can be produced in large quantities, it can provide an extra income for my Zhou family." "What?" Zhou Yang put down the teacup, silently felt the changes in the mana in his body, and sniffed the aroma of the medicine remaining between his lips, his face full of admiration. When the old man heard his admiration, his face was filled with joy, and then he shook his head with depression and helplessness. The old man also has this idea, but Xianyunko is the one that refines the second-order spiritual pill Xianyundan. The main medicine, you can't just waste this kind of elixir just to make tea, right? If you only use the naturally withered leaves, the amount will be enough for the old man to drink. This. Zhou Yang bowed his head in embarrassment, and decided not to pick up the old man. There is only one second-tier alchemist in the family, and that is his father Zhou Suanhao. Once the Xianyunko matures, it will be used by his father for alchemy. If he dares to say that the spiritual grass is used to make tea, his father must slap him. He can't die. "Hey, you're a sly little slicker, don't worry, is this old man the kind of person who doesn't care about the overall situation? I was just talking about it casually." The old man smiled, but he didn't know what Zhou Yang was thinking. He first spoke to him to comfort him, and then picked up some interesting things he had experienced when he was young and told him to help him resolve the embarrassment just now. The two chatted like this. After chatting for about a quarter of an hour, the gate of the cave where the old patriarch practiced at the top of the mountain suddenly opened automatically, and the old and majestic voice of the old patriarch came from it. "Is Xiaozhu here? Come in first." Hearing this voice, the 2 people who were talking stopped together, and then Zhou Yang immediately stood up and cupped his hands to Zhou Yunyi, 7th grandfather, "The grandnephew is going to see the old patriarch first. Go, go, don't let the old clan wait for a long time." Saying goodbye to Zhou Yun, Zhou Yang walked directly through the open door of the cave, and soon saw the contemporary patriarch of the Zhou family, Zhou Minghan, a monk at the foundation building period, in the training room deep in the cave. Zhou Minghan is more than 150 years old this year, but his face looks much younger than Zhou Yun outside. His hair is not completely white, and his complexion is as ruddy as a baby. This is normal. The lifespan of a cultivator in the foundation establishment period is more than 200 years old. If there is no accident, Zhou Minghan will have at least 4 or 5 years of lifespan, and his cultivation base is high, so he naturally looks younger than Zhou Yun. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. When Zhou Yang saw Zhou Minghan, the patriarch of the Zhou clan was sitting cross-legged on the cold jade bed and meditating. He didn't dare to look at it too much. After he came in, he bowed deeply and paid homage, saying, "My grandson sees my great-grandfather." Zhou Minghan, as the only surviving monk of the Ming generation in the Zhou family, and a foundation-building period, naturally became the great-grandfather of all the monks of the Yuan generation. Soon he has already sent a letter to the old man about your performance in Yuyang Cave. You have done a good job in this matter, Xiaozhu, even though the old man was your age back then, compared to you in terms of the overall situation, it is still far away. Far better. Zhou Minghan on Hanyu's bed opened his eyes slightly and looked at Zhou Yang with undisguised admiration. Zhou Yang heard the words and said in his heart that he was unhappy. The status will definitely rise again. However, he was happy, but he didn't get carried away because of it, and quickly replied respectfully, "The great-grandfather is serious, the grandson just did what he should do, but he can't be praised by the great-grandfather. What a good thing to do! If every child of my Zhou family has Xiaozhu, you are so sensible, why should the Zhou family be worried?" Zhou Minghan couldn't help showing a happy smile on his face. Obviously it was Zhou Yang's answer, he couldn't be more satisfied if he was satisfied. He smiled and stretched out his hand, an invisible force dragged Zhou Yang's bowed body up. "Come on, stand up straight and let this old man take a good look at my Zhou family's unicorn." As soon as the old patriarch was happy, he even shouted out the word Kailaniar, which shows that he loves Zhou Yang as a junior. Zhou Minghan has high expectations for Zhou Yang. The Yuquan Zhou family, starting from Zhou Yuquan, the founder of the family, has always had foundation-building cultivators in charge, so it was able to develop to this scale in just over 200 years. But until now, the Yuquan Zhou clan seems to have run out of luck. Since Zhou Minghan, no new foundation-building monks have been born for hundreds of years. This is dangerous. What a cultivator family is most afraid of is the sudden cessation of high-level cultivators. Once they lose the protection of the monks in the foundation-building period, the Zhou family will not be able to continue to develop and expand the family size. Even the ancestral land of Yuquan Lake Oasis and Yuquan Peak may not be able to hold. Therefore, under Zhou Minghan's secret instigation, the development of the Zhou family in recent years has actually stopped secretly long ago. The fear is that if it continues to expand, it will cause others to spy on it, which will lead to the annihilation of the Zhou family after his death. But after all, this is not a solution to the root cause. The best way is for the Zhou family to give birth to a new foundation-building cultivator before he falls. As long as there are foundation-building cultivators in town, with the help of the third-order formation Wanmu Qingtian array on Yuquan Peak and dozens of key training clansmen, even if there are multiple foundation-building cultivators attacking, the Zhou family will not be hurt. Foundation. Originally, Zhou Minghan put his hope on the younger generation of the Xian generation, and even made up his mind. If before his fall, if no one from the Zhou family was promoted to the foundation stage, he would rather put Yuquan Lake Oasis and the Zhou family's elders. Part of the output is dedicated to Huang's Hemen in exchange for the protection of Huang's Hemen, and it cannot let the Zhou family be envied and exterminated for occupying a lot of interests. But now, Zhou Minghan realized that maybe he should change his mind. With the potential shown by Zhou Yang, the younger generation of the Yuan generation, as long as he is given another 20 to 30 years, his hope of building a foundation is probably much greater than those of the Xian generation. He looked carefully at the young man standing in front of him. The handsome and elegant appearance and temperament of the young man was not his focus. What he valued was the attitude of the young man who was neither humble nor arrogant in front of him. Facing the calm state of mind. After reading it, he only had one thought in his mind. This child is very useful. Of course, as an elder, no matter how satisfied and happy he is, he won't show it too much on the face, and it won't encourage the arrogance of young people. Therefore, although he was extremely happy in his heart, his face returned to a calm expression. He looked at Zhou Yang indifferently and asked, "Do you know the purpose of this old man for letting you come here?" "Grandson doesn't know." Zhou Yang answered honestly. Originally, according to the rules of the clan, young monks in the clan must go down the mountain to experience and work for the clan for a period of time before returning to the mountain for meditation. But your situation is special. Although you are only 17 years old, you are already at the 6th level of Qi training. In the past 100 years, no one in the clan has such a cultivation base as you when they came down the mountain at the age of 20. It just so happened that you just broke through with the help of the earth vein aura, and it will take at least 5 years to build up your mana. If you stay on the mountain, wouldn't it be a waste of manpower? That's why this old man decided to do special things and let you go down the mountain to serve the family in advance. This is also your experience and will be of great benefit to your future practice." Zhou Minghan looked at Zhou Yang, who looked attentive, the corners of his mouth curled slightly, and said his arrangement in a deep voice. Sure enough, as he expected, Zhou Yang's expression changed after hearing what he said. Obviously, he didn't expect this kind of thing to call him here. But what made him wonder if he was happy or depressed was that after Zhou Yang's complexion changed slightly, he immediately regained his calm, and then bowed respectfully and said, "My grandson understands and is willing to obey the family's arrangements." Seeing this, he asked in a strange tone, "You don't want to know where the old man plans to arrange you?" The grandson believes that no matter what the great-grandfather arranges, it is for the grandson's good in the end. Zhou Yang smiled in his heart and threw out the words that left Zhou Minghan speechless for a while. After a long while, he laughed angrily and scolded, "Sure enough, he is a sly guy. Xian Hao's son and his wife are both upright people, how could they give birth to a sly guy like you?" After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Zhou Yang to complain, he took the initiative to tell Zhou Yang's arrangement. Your spiritual root attributes are biased towards the two attributes of gold and fire, and you are also practicing a masculine and domineering exercise called Golden Sun Fire Art. Apart from some lack of combat experience, your fighting skills are actually not weaker than any monks of the same level. It just so happens that the cultivator of the family stationed at Qingping Mountain has expired. You can go over and take his place for 5 years. After 5 years, the old man will let someone else go over to take your place. In addition, the old man hopes that during this period of time, you can take the time to learn the art of alchemy in the cultivation of immortals. There is no good seedlings in the family that can take the old man's class. If you can make a difference in this area, building a tree is a great thing for the entire family. After Zhou Minghan finished talking about his arrangements, he waved his hand again and threw a grey storage bag and a small silver shield into Zhou Yang's hands. In the storage bag are some low-level refining materials, and there are also some experiences of the old man about the refining technique, as well as a copy of the real solution of refining collected by the family. You must take good care of these things. Spread it out. As for this silver gang shield magic weapon, it is a fine product among the many second-order magic tools refined by the old man. It should be regarded as the compensation from the old man for you to go down the mountain ahead of time. Okay, if you have nothing else to do, you can retire. The trip to Qingping Mountain should preferably be completed within a month. Zhou Minghan's words and actions made Zhou Yang stunned for a while. In the end, he almost instinctively grasped what he was holding and said, "Then grandson, retire first." It was not until he walked out of the cave and heard the sound of the door of the cave closing, he was shocked and came back to understand what happened. He recalled what Zhou Minghan explained in the cave just now, and his eyes were full of confusion and he muttered to himself, "What happened to me just now? What?" Before he finished speaking, his heart suddenly jumped, and he couldn't help but come up with a bold guess. Could it be that the old patriarch cast some spell on me that didn't work? In the next instant, he immediately stopped his dangerous thought. Even if the old patriarch cast some spells on him, he would definitely just be joking with him. There's no need to think too much about it. Thinking wildly will only harm him. Thinking of this, he looked at the storage bag and the magic weapon in his hand, carefully put them away, and then asked the seventh grandfather Zhou Yun, who was drinking tea alone under the tree, and asked him to help open the array. The law sends himself down the mountain. Before finally stepping out of the formation, Zhou Yang looked back at the top of the mountain again, and saw that the seventh grandfather, Zhou Yun, was standing under the tree and watching him leave with a smile. This kid seems to have found something. It seems that we can't use this kind of trick to make fun of him in the future, so as not to cause a bad misunderstanding. In the cave mansion on the top of the mountain, Zhou Minghan saw the change in Zhou Yang's expression after he left through his divine sense. When he was talking just now, he quietly cast a soul-defying spell that he had obtained in his early years to affect Zhou Yang's mind. It's not that he did this because he was afraid of Zhou Yang's resistance to his arrangement. He just wanted to make fun of him because he couldn't see Zhou Yang's young and mature appearance. It's like the adults among the mortals deliberately gave him a little soju in order to tease the child, and then laughed at the snot and tears of the pretending to be mature child. This kind of teasing would certainly make the elders feel proud of their success, but when they found that their teasing would make the younger generation resent them psychologically, they would regret it. Zhou Minghan is like this now. Fortunately, Zhou Yang is really mature mentally, not pretending to be mature, and he didn't really complain about this old man who was dedicated to his family because of this little joke. After he walked down the top of the mountain, he quickly returned to his attic on the mountainside, and closed the door to organize today's harvest. The first is the storage bag given to him by the old patriarch. This kind of storage device is made of the mouse skin of the monster Ling Void Rat. Almost every immortal cultivator has one piece, even the poorest loose cultivator. Do your best to get one for yourself. Of course, it is also a storage bag, and it is also divided into different sizes. Generally, the storage bags used for scattered cultivation during the Qi training period are mostly only 3 feet square, which is barely enough to hold a few sets of clothes and a small amount of sundries. UU reading www.uuganshu.com. As for the immortal cultivating clan of the Yuquanzhou clan, every clan member can receive a 5-foot square storage bag from the clan for free as long as their cultivation base reaches the Qi training period. The storage bag is even more square. But now, his storage bag has been upgraded again. The storage bag that the old patriarch gave to him looked grey, and the space inside was 3 feet square. In addition to a vessel for refining and a few books of refining, it was also filled with items such as black iron, red copper, low-level refining materials such as century-old ironwood. Zhou Yang made a rough calculation, and if he was only refining tools with few materials such as swords, these materials would at least be enough for him to refine hundreds of times. Ordinary clansmen learn the art of refining, although the clan will also provide materials for free practice, but it will give me hundreds of opportunities. The old patriarch gave me so many materials, and no matter how stupid people are, they can still succeed 2 or 3 times. Come on! Zhou Yang looked at the material in the storage bag, and said in his heart that it would be a lie if he was not moved. He knew that the old patriarch had always been clear about public and private matters, and even if he was extremely talented, he would not make an exception for him in this regard. Then there is only one reason why he can practice with so many materials now. The old patriarch used his personal savings to exchange these materials from the family treasury. It seems that the old patriarch really wants me to inherit his artifact refining skills. As the only third-order artifact refining master in the family, he must have seen something. Maybe I really have a good talent in artifact refining. Zhou Yang remembered his own practice Golden Sun Raging Fire art, and suddenly realized something. A clear smile appeared on his face. Then he carefully put away the storage bag, and looked at another thing given by the old patriarch, the second-order magic weapon Silver Gang Shield. The second-order magic weapon Silver Gang Shield is made from the fallen tree scales of the second-order spiritual object Dragon Scale Tree and mixed with the second-order spiritual object Silver Gang Stone. There are 9 major realms in cultivating immortals. The magic tools, pills, formations, and talismans used by immortal cultivators are divided into 9 levels from the 1st to the 9th level. It is also a second-order magic weapon, and it is also divided into upper, middle, and lower grades. Silver Shield is a second-order magic weapon carefully refined by Zhou Minghan, a third-order craftsman, and its grade is naturally the highest top grade. Before this magic weapon was refined, it looked like it was only the size of a palm. In fact, as long as Zhou Yang refined it, once it was released during battle, it could be turned into a giant shield the size of a door to protect his body, and he could adjust it at will. Position. And because the Silver Gang Stone was incorporated into the refining process, this magic weapon can not only easily block the attacks of flying swords and flying knives of the same rank, but also has a miraculous effect on the magic attacks of immortal cultivators or monsters. Greatly offsets the damage caused by spells below the 3rd level. The second-order Dragon Scale Tree has one in my Zhou family, and I can harvest a few mature tree scales every 10 years, which is considered self-produced, but Silver Gang Stone is not common, even if it is just a fist. A small piece, the price is at least 500 low-grade spirit stones. The gift of the old patriarch is really not light. In the room, Zhou Yang looked at the small silver shield the size of a palm in his hand, and suddenly felt that the magic weapon became much heavier. As a cultivator family, as long as each Zhou family member reaches the Qi training stage, they can regularly receive spiritual stone offerings from the family every year until they are over 60 years old. According to the current clan rules, the Zhou family members on the 1st level of Qi training can receive 10 low-quality spiritual stones a year, and the 2nd level Qi training is 20 low-quality spiritual stones, and so on until the 9th level of Qi training. No change. Because if there is no accident, the 9th level of Qi training is the limit of ordinary monks in the Qi training period. The current family rule of the Zhou family is that as long as the family monks are promoted to the 9th level of Qi training, they will be promoted to family elders, and each elder can receive it every year. The offering of 150 low-grade spirit stones is not restricted by age. As long as the elder does not die, he can receive it in full. Zhou Yang had previously stayed on the 5th floor of Qi practice for 2 years, and his offerings were only 50 low-grade spirit stones per year. Based on this calculation, even if all his spirit stones were not used, it would take 10 years of offering to exchange for one. The fist is big Silver Gang Stone. In fact, because he only entered the Qi training period at the age of 7, after 10 years, not counting the treasures that his parents rewarded him as a gift, his entire net worth was only more than 300 low-grade spirit stones. It can be seen that the old patriarch Zhou Minghan used the Silver Gang Shield as a reward for him to go down the mountain ahead of time. What a great gift! The old patriarch valued me so much, and I must not let him down. Whether it's learning the art of alchemy or stationing at Qingping Mountain, I have to do it beautifully. Zhou Yang's heart warmed, and he couldn't help clenching the magic weapon in his hand, secretly determined to do things well to repay the trust of his elders. In the next few days, Zhou Yang closed the door tightly, and hid in the room with all his heart to sacrificing the Silver Gang Shield magic weapon he had just obtained. He did not walk out of the house door to do things for going down the mountain until after the magic weapon was sacrificed to the best of luck. Prepare. He first went to another cave of the Zhou family to store scriptures, and learned the 6 of Qi training method of Golden Sun Fire, and then selected 5 methods that were beneficial to fighting from among the many spells collected in the cave of magic practice. These 5 spells are the second-order attack spells Golden Saber Art and Fire Snake Art, the second-order defense spell Golden Light Body Protection, and the second-order auxiliary spells Sky Eye Art and Earth Escape Art. The clansmen are not allowed to read the exercises and spells during the period of Qi training in the cave of the Zhou family, but they cannot be taken out of the cave, and it is strictly forbidden to teach them to outsiders without permission. Zhou Yang used to follow the teachings of his parents and elders. Apart from learning some simple first-order auxiliary spells, he did not devote his energy to learning those combat spells that were beneficial to fighting, and focused all his energy on improving his cultivation. But now, since he has to go down the mountain to be stationed on one side, it is difficult to guarantee that he will not encounter a battle of fighting skills. If he does not know how to fight spells at that time, relying only on a few magical tools in his hand, the means are too single, and it is easy to be restrained and targeted. Spells are easy to learn but difficult to master, but it only takes a little while to learn how to use them. With Zhou Yang's 6th level Qi cultivation, it took almost half a month to learn all 5 spells. At this time, it was not far from the 1-month period given to him by the old patriarch, so he wrote a letter explaining the situation, asking the elders of the clan to bring it to his parents who were in a town thousands of miles away. Then he bid farewell to the elders and fellow monks who were familiar with each other on the mountain, and went down the mountain alone. After going down the mountain, Zhou Yang took a camel that was necessary for desert walking from the people at the foot of the mountain, and plunged straight into the boundless sea of sand. This is the first time he has left the Yukon Lake Oasis in 17 years, and the first time he has set foot in the desert in 2 lifetimes. The sand sea is endless, and people walking in it can easily lose their way. Once lost in the sand sea, even immortal cultivators who carry a lot of clear water food through storage bags will eventually die of starvation and thirst if they cannot reach the oasis before the food and water are exhausted. Immortal cultivators are much stronger than mortals, but until they reach the Jindan stage, they cannot completely initiate. Even cultivators of the Zifu stage need to regularly eat meals made from ling or the spirit meat of monsters to maintain their physical needs. In fact, even a Jindan cultivator who is capable of fasting would not dare to fly around in the boundless sea of sand. Jindan cultivators are not afraid of losing their way, but there are not only dangers of getting lost in the sand sea, but also all kinds of terrifying natural disasters and powerful monsters that even Jindan cultivators can kill. For example, in the famous Black Sand Storm, once a Jindan cultivator falls into it, he will be isolated from his consciousness and shielded by the strange power contained in it, and finally he will be worn out by the endless power of the storm. Another example is the most famous 5th-order monster sandworm in the boundless sand sea. Its body is thousands of feet long, and it has terrifying sharp teeth in its mouth. It can crush 5th-order defensive instruments with great force. If you accidentally fall into the sandworm's mouth, you will also lose your life in a confused way. With these risks, unless there is a reason why they must come, those cultivators of the Jindan stage will never go deep into the sand sea easily. Fortunately, whether it is the terrifying black sand storm or the 5th-order monster sandworm that sleeps only in some underground spiritual veins in the depths of the desert, they will not appear near the oasis, otherwise Zhou Yang may not dare. Walking alone in the desert. He traveled in the desert alone for about 5 days with a camel, strictly following the map issued by his family, and arrived at his destination Qingping Mountain smoothly. Qingping Mountain is also an oasis, but it is a man-made oasis. The area of this oasis is very small, only a dozen square kilometers in size. The oasis can be formed only by the Zhou family investing tens of thousands of low-grade spiritual stones here, regardless of the cost, to create a second-order low-grade spiritual vein. And the reason why the Zhou family spent a lot of money to build an oasis here is because a family member of the Zhou family who got lost in the desert more than 50 years ago discovered a medium-sized concentrated iron ore vein here. Concentrated iron ore is a kind of spiritual ore that contains a little spiritual energy. After smelting and processing, it can smelt the first-order spiritual object fine iron and the second-order spiritual object black iron. The main materials for important buildings such as the Jing Pavilion and the Treasure House are also the main materials for the refiners to refine most of the first-order and second-order magic tools, and the market demand is huge. In order to mine the concentrated iron ore in the concentrated iron ore vein, the Zhou family can only build an oasis here for the miners to live in. At the same time, in order to protect the miners from the attacks of the low-level monsters in the desert, the Zhou family must send monks to station here. Whether it's building an oasis or allowing the cultivators to continue their cultivation, the Zhou family can only artificially create spiritual veins here. Of course, all this investment is worth it. Only this medium-sized concentrated iron ore vein, the concentrated iron ore mined every year, after being processed and sold, can bring the Zhou family a net profit of more than 500 low-grade spirit stones. More than 50 years later, the original investment has long been earned it several times over. And judging from the reserves of concentrated iron ore, it can be mined for at least another 50 years. The oasis area of Qingping Mountain is very small, and most of the area has become the living area of miners. Only a small hill with a height of 100 meters in the center of the spiritual vein has been separately marked out as the residence of the monks and the warehouse for finished materials. It can be said that the small hill is the real Qingping Mountain. Because the current chief elder of the Zhou family is the second-order array mage, a second-order array cloud sea-splitting array is also arranged on the Qingping Mountain spirit vessel. Covered, making it difficult to see the layout. Zhou Yang came to the outside of the formation, and after he used his mana and shouted, the clouds and mist in front of him surged, making a way for him to enter the mountain. He entered the inside along the passage of the formation, and soon saw the cultivator stationed inside, a thin-faced middle-aged scholar. This person ranked 16th among the cultivators of the Zhou family with the character Xian, and his name was Zhou Suanjin. "Hey, how could it be Yang that you came to replace me? Are you not yet 20 years old?" Zhou Suanjin, who was dressed as a scholar, saw Zhou Yang coming in, and couldn't help but let out a small yawn. Before Zhou Yang saluted and said hello, he put down the book in his hand and asked questions. Returning to Uncle 16, this is the arrangement of the old patriarch. His old man said that his younger nephew's cultivation base has reached the standard of going down the mountain, and he made an exception to let his younger nephew go down the mountain to experience earlier. Zhou Yang answered honestly. Zhou Suanjin's face was startled, and he whispered in a puzzled voice, "The cultivation base has reached the standard of going down the mountain? When did our Zhou family have this standard?" After speaking, his heart moved, as if he had remembered something. He hurriedly applied a sky eye technique to himself, looking at Zhou Yang with golden light in his eyes and looking up and down. "It doesn't matter if you don't look at it." After a look, he couldn't help opening his mouth and exclaimed, "Ah! You have broken through to the 6th level of Qi training. After retreating in Yuyang Cave a month ago, I was lucky enough to break through." Zhou Yang smiled slightly and nodded in recognition without hesitation. In fact, in the cultivation world, it is a very taboo thing to directly use the heavenly eye technique to observe other people's cultivation. There are often cultivators who fight for this kind of thing. However, Zhou Suanjin was his own senior, so Zhou Yang didn't care about such trivial matters. "Tisk tisk tisk, amazing, amazing, how old are you?" "As an uncle, I have worked hard for 40 to 50 years to cultivate the 7th level of Qi, but you are good, you have practiced the 6th level of Qi at the age of 17, and it will be another 10 or 8 years. The cultivation base will surpass me. Hey, I'm getting old, and I can't compare to young people. They all have the qualifications of mid-grade spiritual roots. Why is there such a big gap?" Zhou Suanjin put away his spells and looked at this outstanding junior with complicated eyes. He didn't know whether he should be happy that the family had so many talents, or should he feel ashamed and lost that his cultivation base was about to be surpassed by a junior who was several decades younger. This is not the first time that Zhou Yang has encountered such a situation. Since he broke through the 6th level of Qi training, the peers and elders on Yukwan Peak have been amazed and happy about his cultivation speed, more or less. Like Zhou Suanjin, they all showed a look of loss and gloom. In this regard, he can only be silent, not too much to say. Zhou Yang really can't say much. The more he cultivated, the wider the gap between his cultivation and that of his peers, the more he felt the importance of aptitude for low-level cultivators. Only 1 or 2 spiritual root cultivators can be born out of 10,000 mortals. The chance of a cultivator's descendants producing spiritual roots is relatively high, but it is only a few tenths. Most of these people with spiritual roots are mainly low-grade spiritual roots. On average, only one middle-grade spiritual root cultivator can be owned by 10 people. As for high-grade spiritual roots, there are even fewer. Among 100 cultivators, hard to have one. There are more than 100,000 members of the Zhou family on the oasis of Yukon Lake, but all the cultivators in the Zhou family now have less than 100 people in the Qi training period, including 7 or 8 foreign cultivators who are married to the Zhou family cultivators. Among the dozens of cultivators in the Zhou family, only the old patriarch Zhou Minghan is a high-grade spiritual root cultivator, and the rest are middle-grade and low-grade spiritual root. And how much influence does the quality of spiritual roots have on practitioners? It is also a first-level cultivation level during the Qi training period, practicing the same exercises, meditating in the same place. A low-grade spiritual root practitioner, the effect of meditating for 10 days is equivalent to a middle-grade spiritual root practitioner meditating for 1 day effect. And the effect of a mid-grade spiritual root practitioner who meditates for more than 10 days may not be as effective as a high-grade spiritual root practitioner who meditates for 1 day. High-grade spiritual root practitioners not only practice fast, but also have a much greater chance of breaking through when faced with the first level of practice, the foundation level, even if they do not take foundation pill. The rare elixir that can greatly increase the success rate of foundation building also has a 30% probability of breaking through. It is said that there are spiritual monks and Taoist monks above the top-grade spiritual roots. Any spiritual cultivator, as long as he does not die in the middle, will definitely become the ancestor of the golden core stage, and there will not be any bottlenecks in the middle. As for the Taoist monks, that is even more of a legend. Since there have been practitioners in this world, there have been fewer than 1 Taoist monks, and all of them are superpowers who rule an era. In addition to the spiritual body and the Taoist body, there is also a special physique called treasure body in the world of practice. Treasure body is an extremely special physique. Any spiritual root cultivator may have a treasure body. If a cultivator with a treasure body can practice the exercises that fit the treasure body, the speed of cultivation will be faster than that of the same quality spiritual root. The cultivator is much faster, and as the cultivation level increases in the future, he will also obtain unique treasure body supernatural powers. For example, Zhou Yang may have some kind of masculine treasure body, so he is obviously a mid-grade spiritual talent. After practicing the masculine and domineering exercises like Golden Sun Raging Fire Art, the speed of practice is the same as that of high-grade spirits. Root monk is quite. If there is no accident, Zhou Yang will definitely be able to raise his cultivation to the 9th level of Qi training before the age of 40. Ordinary middle-grade spiritual root practitioners like Zhou Suanjin will probably not reach the 9th level of Qi training until they are 70 or 80 years old. And if it is an ordinary low-grade spiritual root practitioner, even if he lives to the upper limit of the lifespan of a cultivator during the Qi training period, he may not be able to cultivate to the 9th level of Qi training. And a cruel reality is that the older the monks during the Qi training period, the more difficult it is to build the foundation. The probability of successful foundation building for the monks over the age of 60 who practice Qi at the 9th level is less than half that of the monks under the age of 60. For monks over the age of 80 in the Qi training period, the probability of foundation building is still lower. For the Qi training monks over the age of 100, Zhou Yang has never heard of such a strange person appearing. Given Zhou Yang's age and cultivation speed, his success rate in foundation building is indeed much higher than that of ordinary people, which is why the old patriarch Zhou Minghan valued him so much. It's a pity that the treasure body has no bonus to the success rate of monks' foundation building. Otherwise, after Zhou Yang has reached the 9th level of Qi training, he can try to build foundations. Both of them understood these situations, so seeing Zhou Yang being silent, Zhou Suanjin quickly adjusted his mentality and took over the work with him. Staffing Qingping Mountain, there are three main responsibilities. First, after receiving the alarm from the steward sent by the family to the mine, go to the mine to help the miners get rid of some first and second order monsters that occasionally break in. The second is to protect in the miner camp outside. The finished materials smelted in the camp will be stored in the warehouse on the mountain in time, and wait for the family to send someone to collect it. The last thing is to take care of the more than 10 acres of spiritual fields on the mountain, which is related to your own stomach. Eat enough. In addition, if you encounter powerful monsters and human monks that you can't deal with, don't leave the range of the formation easily. The best way is to stick to the formation, and then use the blood to stimulate this third-order letter transmission to wait. Family rescue. Finally, this is the control formation flag and control method of the Qingping Mountain Formation. I can only leave after you refine the formation flag and become familiar with the formation. While talking, Zhou Suanjin handed over everything the cultivator needed to use to Zhou Yang, and taught him how to use them. 4 or 5 days passed in this way, until Zhou Yang completely mastered the second-order formation of the Cloud Sea Splitting Array. Zhou Suanjin returned to the family with the output results of the Qingping Mountain Mine for nearly a year. After Zhou Suanjin left, Zhou Yang was the Zhou family with the highest status in Qingping Mountain. He first summoned several managers of the Zhou family who were responsible for the management of the mining and smelting of the ore veins. He had a preliminary understanding of the operation process, and handed them a few syllables with his own breath, so that they could notify him in time after the incident. These people can serve as the stewards of the Zhou family, and they are all martial arts practitioners in the Xiantian realm. However, these people have no spiritual roots and cannot develop mana to become immortal cultivators in the key training period. They can only stay in the Xiantian realm for the rest of their lives. Of course, for mortals, the strength possessed by practitioners in the innate realm is enough to make them look up. As long as mortals become innate practitioners and extract innate qi from their bodies, they can walk like galloping horses, carry a cauldron, easily defeat 100 with one attack, and have great resistance to various diseases. It's a pity that mortals are mortals without spiritual roots. Even if they have cultivated innate qi, they cannot cast even the lowest first-order spells. The real cultivators with spiritual roots do not admit that these mortals are also cultivators, and they don't bother to communicate with them. Zhou Yang does not discriminate against these mortal practitioners, but these people have been discriminated against by real cultivators for a long time, and the concept of honor and inferiority has already been deeply rooted in his heart. Even if he took the initiative to ask them to chat, no one dared to treat him as an equal clan. Chat, so he can only let these people leave in the end. In the next time, Zhou Yang's life will be simple. Every morning, he first meditated in front of the rising sun for 3 hours, and then practiced the 5 spells he learned from the Tibetan scripture pavilion for 3 hours. In this way, in the evening, he allocated half an hour to the spiritual field on the mountain. Those gratifying linguids and insects. The spiritual veins of Qingping Mountain are only second-rank low-grade ones, and they are also artificial ones. After the daily spiritual energy is supplied to a cultivator in the late stage of qi training, only 20 to 30% of the spiritual energy remains. Therefore, only about 15 acres of spiritual fields have been opened here, and the cultivated spiritual valleys are specially used for the food of the monks stationed there, and there is no need to turn them over to the clan. The spiritual valleys planted in these spiritual fields are called golden pearl rice, which looks like the cotton trees in Zhou Yang's previous life. They ripen once a year, and each tree bears dozens of fruits. The golden fruit is named golden pearl rice because the fruit is shaped like a pearl. This kind of golden pearl rice grows in spiritual fields and needs to absorb spiritual energy to survive and mature. Therefore, in addition to being rich in nutrients and having excellent taste, rice grains also contain trace amounts of spiritual energy, which is very beneficial for monks to absorb. During the qi training period, cultivators eat golden pearl rice for a long time, and only a small bowl can satisfy the nutrition required by the body for 2 or 3 days, and it can also improve the cultivation level a little. Even the monks in the foundation establishment period and even in the Purple House period, most of the meals they usually eat are made of this golden pearl rice. Zhou Yang started to practice at the age of 4, and it took only 3 years to complete the cultivation of the 9th floor of the innate realm. In addition to his good aptitude, he and his parents often set up a small stove for him and let him eat this golden pearl rice every day. It has a great relationship with some low-level monster meat. Because he is not a Ling's Hifu, Zhou Yang does not know some magic that Ling's Hifu must learn to increase the production of Ling Tian. He can only water, weed and catch the Jinzu rice planted in Ling Tian like ordinary farmers. Catch insects and make sure they won't die. As long as he doesn't die, the output of these 10 acres of spiritual fields is completely enough for his daily food needs, and there is even a lot of surplus. Zhou Yang knew that these balances were the garrison welfare that the family gave to the cultivators. After all, it was the duty of every adult to go down the mountain to complete the family task, but they would not receive additional rewards from the family. After spending half an hour each day taking care of the spiritual field on the mountain, Zhou Yang spent the next half of the night studying the art of refining tools. He didn't start the refining process right away, but while carefully studying the refining books and the refining notes given by the old patriarch, he used the ores dug from the iron ore to practice and learn the most basic materials for refining. Such a simple and fulfilling life will last for 3 years. 3 years later, after Zhou Yang had thoroughly grasped the knowledge recorded in those ancient artifact refining books, and had fully mastered the refining skills of the materials, he took out the materials given to him by the old patriarch and began to formally refine the tools. In order to save materials, he chose to refine the simplest first-order sword-like magic weapon Qing Feng sword. The main material of the first-order magic tool Qing Feng sword is fine iron, and the hilt can be made of spiritual wood such as century-old iron wood. The monks in the innate realm hold the magic tool and inject the innate qi, which can be stimulated according to the infuser's cultivation base. The sword light ranging from 1 foot injures the enemy. Refining this magic weapon is quite simple. First, the fine iron is tempered with a spirit fire and cast into a sword embryo. Then, while maintaining the flame temperature so that the sword embryo is in a high temperature heating state, the magic power of the cultivator is used as a guide. Arrange a Feng Rui prohibition in the sword embryo. When the ban is completed, it is the time when the long sword is quenched. If the quenched sword body emits the unique aura of the magic weapon, it means that the refining tool has been completed. If not, only sharper mortal soldiers will be obtained. A handful. All of this is simple to say, but it is not easy to do. Even if Zhou Yang had already imagined the situation of refining countless times in his mind, he had practiced the layout process of the Feng Rui prohibition countless times beforehand, and it was the first time that he had really practiced the refining process. When the device is used, it will undoubtedly end in failure. With the sound of bang coming from inside the vessel, his first vessel refining was over, and he didn't even reach the quenching stage. The first failure to refine the weapon did not dampen Zhou Yang's enthusiasm, because he never imagined that he would be successful once. If the artifact refining technique is so easy to master, the profession of artifact refiner will not become the most popular profession in the world of cultivating immortals. Any craftsman, even the most talented craftsman, cannot succeed in crafting the first time. Most of the craftsmen have a little talent for crafting, and then rely on countless materials to accumulate craftsmanship. Therefore, in the world of immortals, among those loose cultivators who have no sect, and no family, there are very few alchemists and alchemists, because they can't afford the waste of materials needed to learn these two skills. Even for a foundation building family like the Zhou family with foundation building stage monks, it is very difficult to cultivate a second-order craft refiner who can really make money. They must select talented children and then invest a lot of money. Before Zhou Yang, the Zhou family also had many monks in the Xian generation to learn the art of refining, but only his seventh uncle, Zhou Suanlin, was barely promoted to the second-order refining master, and this was still guided by the third-order refining master Zhou Minghan. It was cultivated after smashing materials worth thousands of spirit stones. However, the limit of a cultivator in the Qi training period is the second-order refiner. In order to become a third-order weapon refiner, one must first become a foundation-building cultivator. Therefore, Zhou Minghan said that he hoped that Zhou Yang could inherit his artifact refining technique. His subconscious intention was to hope that he could successfully establish a foundation. As long as he can successfully establish a foundation and show a little talent for refining, even if he is smashed with a spirit stone, Zhou Minghan is sure to smash him into a third-order refining master. Of course, Zhou Yang didn't know about these things. He just felt that the materials for refining were not easy to come by, and it was a pity to waste them. Therefore, after failing, he did not rush to try again. Instead, he cleaned up the waste in the vessel and carefully summed up the experience and lessons. After he felt certain, he started a new attempt again. In this way, fail, summarize, fail again, and summarize again. After 17 failures, Zhou Yang finally succeeded in refining a finished Qing Feng sword and officially became a first-order smith. With the first successful experience, Zhou Yang's success rate when refining weapons is much better. Basically, he can succeed once every 10 times. When he had gone through hundreds of refining and controlled the success rate to 2/10, he stopped refining the first-order magic weapon Qing Feng sword, and changed to refining another first-order magic weapon. Flaming knife. The first-order magic tool flaming knife, the main material is also fine iron, but at the same time, 2/10 of the fire attribute spiritual gold and red copper must be mixed. It can stimulate the flame to attach to the knife to cause burning damage to the enemy, and it can also deal with some ghosts that cannot be attacked by pure physical attacks. The refining process of flaming blade is roughly the same as that of Qing Feng sword. The difference is that when refining flaming blade, the restriction placed in the blade is not sharpness, but flame restriction. Although Zhou Yang had a successful experience in refining the Qing Feng sword, he still failed to refine the flaming blade magic weapon for the first time. However, he summed up the experience of failure. The second time he was lucky enough to succeed, and then after dozens of refining, he successfully controlled the refining efficiency of the flaming knife to be above 20%. At this time, the old patriarch still had a lot of basic refining materials left for him, but he did not continue refining, but instead refined the finished magical tools that he had refined, and the refining tools that he had summed up when refining the tools. The experience, as well as the letter written to the parents, were handed over to Zhou Qi, a cultivator of the same generation who came to collect the iron ore concentrate, and asked him to bring it back to the family, to the old patriarch and to his parents who were far away. Zhou Qi ranks third in the Zhou family's Yuan generation. His parents are ordinary mortals. He is 32 years old this year. However, because the quality of his spiritual roots is only low grade, he can only reach the third level of Qi practice now that his cultivation is worthy. There is no hope of building a foundation in this life. When he heard about Zhou Yang becoming a first-order item refiner, he was naturally surprised for a while, and then he took the things with a happy face and nodded vigorously. "Ninth brother, don't worry, I will definitely bring the things and letters to the old patriarch. With my uncle and aunt." After he finished speaking, he paused for a while, and said earnestly again with a sincere expression, "But you must also cultivate well, don't put all your energy on the refining tool, you are the hope of our entire Zhou family, the elders in the clan and all of us brothers and sisters are counting on you to build a foundation and successfully lead our Zhou family to continue. What the third brother said is that I will work hard to cultivate, and I will never let the elders down." Zhou Yang nodded and responded with a serious expression. "You just have to know what you have in mind, then I'll go first." Watching his clan brother Zhou Qi leave, Zhou Yang controlled the formation to restore it to its original state, and closed the door to read the long letter that his parents entrusted his clan brother to him. Zhou Yang's father, Zhou Suanhao, devoted himself to cultivation in the early years. It was not until he found that he had no hope of building a foundation at the age of 60 that he followed the advice of the elders of the family to marry a wife and have children. At that time, his mother, Lin Yuding, was hunted down by the enemy and escaped to the oasis of Yukwan Lake and was rescued by him. The two became married because of this, and they gave birth to Zhou Yang within a few years. Because both of them are immortal cultivators, the first child was lucky enough to detect a medium-quality spiritual root. Since then, Zhou Yang has become the heart and soul of this pair of parents. It's gone, baby is amazing. It is precisely because of the meticulous love from his parents since he was a child that Zhou Yang, a traveler with 20 or 30 years of memory from his previous life, slowly let go of everything in his previous life, accepted and recognized his parents in this life from the bottom of his heart, and recognized the entire Zhou family. In order to allow this son to go further than the two of them in practice, the couple, Zhou Xuanhao and Lin Yuding, did not have any other children after that, and focused all their energy on earning spiritual stones and taking care of Zhou Yang. Later, when they found out that Zhou Yang had the talent of early wisdom and could take care of themselves, the couple handed him over to the elders of the clan to take care of him, and then sat in the family's shop in a cultivator's square city all the year round. The alchemy and winemaking techniques that he mastered earned spiritual stones for his family and son. As they come here, Zhou Yang understood very well the thoughts of Zhou Xuanhao and Lin Yuding as a couple. Just like his parents in his last life left their hometown to work in the city at a young age in order to provide him with education, everything Zhou Xuanhao and Lin Yuding are doing now is also for him to build a foundation in the future and to be able to practice on the road. Go further. So he never resented because he couldn't see his parents all the year round. Instead, he wrote several letters from the elders of the Trust family to his parents every year, telling them about his usual life experiences. He knew that these seemingly ordinary and boring things were what parents want to see most. Yang Qingpingshan is far away from the family, you must think twice before you do anything, and everything is mainly to protect yourself. Son, the business of the restaurant here is getting better and better recently. The hunger marketing method you told my mother last time is really good. My son is really a genius. He will definitely become a foundation building monk in the future. No, he will definitely become the ancestor of the golden core stage. Zhou Yang looked at the letter his parents wrote to him word for word, with a sincere smile on his face. A simple letter from his parents was far more useful than 1,000 words to inspire him. After reading the entire letter, he carefully put away the letter and whispered to himself, "There are still 2 years, when I finish the remaining 2 years of stationing tasks, I will go back to the family to prepare to break through the 7th level of Qi training, as long as after breaking through to the 7th level of Qi training and advancing to the late stage of Qi training, I applied to the old patriarch to be stationed in Fangxi, and then our family can be reunited." On the other hand, when Zhou Qi returned to the family with the magic weapon and experience refined by Zhou Yang and handed it over to the old patriarch, it immediately attracted Zhou Minghan's attention. He personally inspected the instruments that Zhou Yang refined one by one, pointed out the deficiencies and gave suggestions for improvement, and then answered the questions that Zhou Yang recorded on the instrument refining experience one by one, and then asked the clan elders of the Guang generation made a trip in person and delivered some higher level refining materials and refining experience to Zhou Yang. Ha ha ha, Xiaozhu, you are really proud of yourself. This old man has lived for hundreds of years. It is the first time that the old patriarch is so happy and attaches great importance to a younger generation. Now your Zhou family Kailaniar's name has spread throughout the clan. Even those people in the world are talking about your deeds. The old man of the Zhou family's Guang generation, who was in charge of delivering things to Zhou Yang, was named Zhou Chuan, ranked 3rd among his peers, and the 2nd elder among the 8 elders of the Zhou family. The old man is already 112 years old, and is very close to the lifespan of a cultivator during the Qi training period. If Zhou Minghan hadn't personally ordered him to go by name and surname this time, no one in the family would have dared to alarm the dying man. Elder. It's really a sin for the grandnephew to make this trip, the third grandpa tired, it's really a sin for you reading www.youcancha.com. Zhou Yang looked at the old man whose mouth was leaking when he laughed. While moved, he also sighed secretly. He knew that if the cultivators in the late stage of qi training in the family all had their own tasks, the old patriarch would never have let Zhou Chuan, an old man who was about to become squat, come to this trip. The arrival of Zhou Chuan not only showed that the old patriarch and the family valued him, but also exposed the family's lack of available manpower. He, the old man is old, it doesn't matter if he sits down tomorrow. If I can see an outstanding junior like you appear in the family before sitting down, the old man will die and close his eyes. The old man Zhou Chuan smiled happily, reached out and patted Zhou Yang's shoulder lightly to show his closeness, but he had already looked down on life and death. But he said that, after the next second, he couldn't help but sigh with regret. It's a pity that the old man can't wait for the day when you build the foundation, otherwise the old man will go to Huangchuan after his death, and he will have a face. I went to see the ancestors of Yaquan. Zhou Yang was silent, and his mood became heavy. In the past 100 years or so, successive generations of monks in the Zhou family have been stuck on the foundation building, so that old people like Zhou Chuan have a deep obsession in their hearts. The only obsession in their hearts is I hope that in my lifetime, I can see another foundation building cultivator appear in the Zhou family to replace the old patriarch to guard the family. His father, Zhou Xuanhao, actually had this kind of obsession. Otherwise, he would not have made every effort to earn spirit stones outside to prepare for his foundation building in the future. And just when Zhou Yang was thinking about how to break this heavy atmosphere, a fire suddenly passed through the sea of clouds outside Qingping Mountain and fell in front of him, from which came the extremely panicked voice of Zhou's housekeeper at the iron ore concentrate outside. "Master Immortal, help, there are powerful monsters attacking the mine." Half an hour later, Zhou Yang and Zhou Chuan, who received the alarm, rushed to the outside of the mine where the accident happened. At this time, dozens of mining miners had gathered outside the mine. These people seemed to be greatly frightened, and their faces were full of horror. They didn't even see Zhou Yang and Zhou Chuan coming over. Reaction. Seeing this, Zhou Yang couldn't help frowning. Although they are mortal miners, these people are also from the Zhou clan. They have grown up listening to the deeds of immortal cultivators and monster beasts. The Zhou family cultivator will bring the corpses of various monster beasts every few years. These mortals are enlightened and courageous. In addition, the teachers and village administrators in the mortal school will often teach them the knowledge of all kinds of low-level monsters in the desert. How can they be scared like this by a mere monster? What's more, in the past few years, Zhou Yang has also received several alarms and came to the mine to get rid of demons. Although there were some people who were frightened by the miners at that time, it would definitely not be like today. Everyone was extremely frightened. He even forgot to salute when he arrived. At this time, his eyes swept away, but he couldn't see the miner in charge who called the police, and then his eyes became sharp. What happened? What monster attacked the mine? Where are you in charge? Realizing what, Zhou Yang mobilized his mana a little to release an aura that belonged to an immortal cultivator, and asked the situation in a cold voice. Pressed by the imposing mana emanating from the immortal cultivators on his body, the mortal miners present all sank, and many of them fell to their knees on the ground. However, this did have the effect that Zhou Yang wanted, allowing the mortal miners to quickly recover from the fear of being dominated by monsters and discover his existence as Master Immortal Master. Ah, the Immortal Master is here. Master Immortal, please help, there are monsters, and the monsters killed people. Save my child, Master Immortal, please save my child, he still hasn't come out of the mine. The miners woke up like a dream. Regardless of whether they were overwhelmed by Zhou Yang's aura before, they now knelt down on the ground in unison, and kowtowed to him for help. If it was Zhou Yang who had just descended the mountain, it might be a little uncomfortable to see dozens of people kneeling in front of him, but now he is very calm, and he didn't even let these people get up, because he knows how to deal with these people. For mortals, kneeling and talking to the immortal cultivator will bring peace of mind. He looked at these gossiping miners, mobilized some mana a little bit, and displayed an auxiliary first order spell, Enchanted Sound, and let his voice have a special charm and said, "Don't panic. Since I'm here, I will definitely get rid of the monsters, and now you answer me honestly, where are you in charge? What do the murderous monsters look like?" The miners are only mortals, and even if it is a first order spell, it is not something they can resist. With the help of Enchanted Voice, Zhou Yang quickly got the news he wanted. Back to the words of the immortal master, the steward was found and eaten by the monster after he issued a call for help. Those of us escaped after hearing the screams from inside, and no one has seen the appearance of the monster. Everything you see is dead. After listening to the descriptions of the miners, he couldn't help but look at the clan elder Zhou Chuan who was following him. The old man's family is mature and sophisticated, and he knew what he meant with just one look. He couldn't help but smile and said, "This old man is just here to help, you are a monk stationed here, and everything depends on your opinion." Zhou Yang understood, the old man's meaning was already obvious, this was his experience, unless he couldn't solve this matter, the old man would definitely not take the initiative to intervene. The nephew understands, then I will ask the third grandfather to help these miners back, and the nephew will go to the mine to kill the demons. He nodded, and when even handed over, he said his decision. I never thought that after Zhou Chuan heard his words, the smile on his face suddenly faded, and he looked at him with a displeased expression, blowing his beard and staring, "Why, you think this old man is old and useless, and you think this old man will follow him? Does it bother you?" "Third grandpa, you misunderstood. That's not what the grandnephew meant. The grandnephew was just worried." "You're so worried. Although the old man is very old, when it comes to fighting skills, 10 of you are no match for the old man. Instead of worrying about the old man, it is better to worry about yourself. If something happens to you, the old man will have no face. Go back to the family to see the old patriarch. Do you want me to be the sinner of the whole family?" Although the old man Zhou Chuan is more than 100 years old, his temper has not changed at all. He understands Zhou Yang's kindness, but he is full of anger about Zhou Yang's arrangement, and he is so angry that he points at Zhou Yang on the spot. Scolded. Zhou Yang was scolded for being speechless, so he could only admit his mistake with a wry smile on his face. The third grandfather calms down his anger, his nephew knows that he is wrong, then ask the third grandfather to protect the nephew's law, and let's go to the mine and eliminate the demons together. It's almost there. The anger on the old man's face subsided slightly, and he accepted his apology. So the two of them took out their hand tools from their storage bags, and at the same time cast a second-order defense spell called Golden Light Body Protection to put a layer of golden light on themselves, and then drilled into the mine one after the other. Cave entrance. The concentrated iron ore veins here in Qingping Mountain have been mined for decades, and after years of expansion and reinforcement, the mine tunnel is enough to accommodate 2 people entering and leaving at the same time. Zhou Yang and Zhou Chuan went straight down the mine tunnel. After being blessed with the sky eye technique, the 2 pairs of eyes that became golden sparkles kept shooting in all directions. The dark environment in the cave did not affect their eyesight in the slightest. They traveled very fast and arrived at the original murder site in a short while. They found the clothes and bloodstains left after the miners died in a mining operation, and then followed the bloodstains on the ground and the demonic aura on the beasts. After searching, he quickly found the monster that was eating the miner's body in another mine. It was a huge mouse like a wolf dog. Its hair was as cold as steel needles, and the skin under the hair was faintly reflecting the luster of metal. When Zhou Yang and the 2 found it, it was lying on its back on the ground. Miners gnawed on corpses on their stomachs. "Be careful, it's a second-tier high-grade monster golden rat." The old man Zhou Chuan also had another identity, that is, the only second-order animal trainer in the Zhou family. As soon as he saw the figure of the monster, he recognized the origin of the monster and issued a warning to Zhou Yang. While reminding Zhou Yang to be careful, he quickly explained the strengths and weaknesses of this monster. Golden rat got its name because it likes to devour all kinds of metals. It is a second-order high-grade monster when it's grown up, and its main attack method is the teeth and claws, which can even bite through second-order instruments, will also shoot hairs all over the body to injure the enemy in critical moments. Attack the enemy. Moreover, the golden rat has a very strong defense against its fur and bones because it devours all kinds of metals. Only a second-tier high-grade magic weapon can hurt it, or burning it with real fire has a miraculous effect. In addition, its eyes are also weak points. When the old man Zhou Chuan was talking, the monster golden eating rat had stopped eating after being alerted by the two of them, showing a pair of scarlet beast pupils and looking at the two of them, his eyes full of killing intent. Seeing this, the old man Zhou Chuan also seemed to have forgotten everything he said above that was mainly based on Zhou Yang's opinions, and directly ordered Zhou Yang in a tone of indifference, "Listen to the old patriarch, he took the silver astral shield, the magic weapon was given to you, then you can control this magic weapon to protect yourself." The old man happens to have a second-order high-grade magic weapon, shaking mountain hammer, and this monster is handed over to the old man to deal with. Zhou Yang didn't try to be stubborn either, he nodded immediately after hearing the words, "My nephew understands, third grandpa, you have to be careful. If it really doesn't work, we can go back first, and then call back and call on people to deal with this beast." After he finished speaking, he took out the silver astral shield magic weapon, turned it several times larger and revolved around him, so as to resist the attack of the enemy from any direction at any time. Seeing Zhou Yang being so obedient, the old man Zhou Chuan was also very relieved. He was afraid that Zhou Yang would be arrogant when he was young and could not stand this arrangement, and he would have a headache. At this moment, he has no worries, even if he waved his hand. He also released a small blue-black shield to rotate around him for protection, then reached out and patted the storage bag, and took out another gourd sledgehammer to the demon. The beast golden rat hit him. Boom! After hearing a loud roar, the entire mine shook violently. Zhou Yang looked around and saw that the place where the golden eating rat was located had already been smashed by the gourd sledgehammer, and a large pit with a diameter of about 10 meters had been smashed, but there was no trace of blood. "Be careful, it's coming for you." While Zhou Yang was staring at the deep pit, Yu Yu was reading www.nexttoyuyuganshu.com suddenly remembered the loud shout of the old man Zhou Chuan. Then, before he could react, a black shadow jumped out from the cave wall next to him, and slammed into the silver shield magic weapon that sensed danger and automatically protected the master. Silver Gang Shield. This magic weapon is worthy of being a high-quality magic weapon carefully refined by the old patriarch Zhou Minghan. Although it cannot exert its maximum power without the master command of Zhou Yang, the second-order high-grade monster golden rat hits the spot. Was abruptly blocked by it. However, this time also exhausted the mana that Zhou Yang had injected into the magic weapon beforehand, causing the magic weapon to fall directly to the ground after blocking the next blow. Damn! Zhou Yang scolded secretly in his heart, and when he came back to his senses, he quickly mobilized his spiritual sense to establish a connection with the magic weapon, and re-injected the magic power to make the magic weapon fly to protect himself. At this time, the golden eating rat missed a single hit, and disappeared from the sight of Zhou Yang and the two of them using the extremely cunning technique of escaping the ground, making the hammer that old man Zhou Chuan hit later failed again. Still too young. Elder Zhou Chuan, who saw this scene, shook his head secretly in his heart, but he didn't accuse Zhou Yang of anything. Because at his age, he was not as good as Zhou Yang in the face of a sudden attack by a monster. At least Zhou Yang didn't panic and made a remedy in time. He waited until Zhou Yang had done the protection again, and then he reminded him, "Xiaozhu, pay attention, when it comes out again, the old man will use the pointing to the ground into steel spell to ban its escape from the ground, then you can be sure to cheer up and prevent it from jumping over the wall desperately." Third Grandpa, rest assured, the mistake just now will never be made again by the grandnephew. Zhou Yang nodded vigorously with a shy expression on his face, and was already alert. Golden Rat is a very aggressive monster. Although Zhou Chuan and Zhou Yang are not weak in their auras, they do not make them feel incomparable danger. The human who disturbed it to eat is very annoyed, and will not let the two of them off easily at all. After attacking Zhou Yang and being blocked by the Silver Gang Shield automatic protector, this cunning monster hid in secret for half an hour before attacking again. This time, the target of the Golden Rat attack was the old man Zhou Chuan. In order to lure him out, the old man deliberately put away the golden light to protect his body, which made him think he had found an opportunity. However, the veteran Zhou Chuan was not a rookie like Zhou Yang who had just come down the mountain. He just jumped out of the cave wall where he was hiding, and was immediately knocked to the ground by a flying round shield. Then just when it was frightened and wanted to escape again, a golden light suddenly shot out from the fingers of the old man Zhou Chuan, and quickly sank into the ground of the mine. In an instant, the ground within a range of dozens of meters became as hard as steel under the action of golden light, and instantly stuck half of the golden rat half of its body on the ground. Good chance. Whether it was Zhou Yang or Zhou Chuan, they never thought that pointing to the ground into steel would actually be able to use the effect of drawing the ground as a prison. Their eyes lit up, and they launched a follow-up attack almost at the same time. I saw the old man Zhou Kui raise his hand, and the hammer head of the gourd sledgehammer instantly soared to the size of the water tank, and smashed the golden eating rat that was stuck on the ground as fiercely as Mount Tai pressed the top. Zhou Yang remembered the old man's previous words. He did not use the magic weapon to attack, but resorted to the second-level spell fire snake technique that he had been practicing for several years. With a quick finger, he summoned a flaming python several meters long and rushed towards the golden rat. The old patriarch said at the time that the golden sun fire art he practiced was good at fighting, but it was not aimless. The ordinary second-order spell fire snake art released in his hands was at least more powerful than the fire released by ordinary 6th-level chi monks. Snake art is twice as big. Rumbling after a burst of earth-shaking explosions, the entire mine tunnel collapsed for a little while because of the blow of Zhou Chuan and Zhou Yang, the grandson and grandson. I only remembered exterminating the demon just now, but I forgot that the two of them are now in the depths of tens of meters deep underground. If the mine cave really collapsed and hundreds of millions of sediments were pressed down, it would not be the two of them practicing qi. The little cultivator can handle it, and it is almost the same as a Jindan cultivator. Quick, let's get out first. After the old man Zhou Quan's face turned pale, he immediately made a decision to withdraw temporarily. He didn't even have time to take back the gourd sledgehammer. Compared with eliminating the demon, of course, it is more important to keep Zhou Yang, the genius child of the Zhou family. The two retreated for tens of meters in a row, and did not stop until they were close to the exit of the mine. Then the two of them waited for a while. After the shaking of the ground was completely over, the old man Zhou Chuan strictly ordered Zhou Yang to continue to wait above, and went down alone to check the situation. After a while, the old man Zhou Chuan who went down to check the situation came back, but he came back empty-handed. That beast was so big that it was seriously injured and ran away. Facing Zhou Yang's doubtful eyes, the old man Zhou Chuan scolded and explained the situation with a look of resentment. Hearing this, Zhou Yang also sighed with a look of pity. It's really a pity, such a second-tier high-grade monster is not common here. If you can take it down and give it to the old patriarch, you will definitely be able to refine it. A few second-order high-grade instruments are here. It's good that he didn't say this, but when he said this, the expression on old man Zhou Quan's face turned a bit ugly. The old man originally wanted to show his strength in front of this nephew and tell this young man that he is old, but he is not old. The result is now like this. The old man can imagine how annoyed he is. This matter is not over. Golden Rat is the most vengeful beast. This time we will seriously injure it here. When it is healed, it will definitely come to eat people. When that time comes, we will prepare relevant treasures in advance, and we must it was slaughtered, skinned, and bones." The old man said with a look of hatred. Zhou Yang's heart twitched when he heard the old man say this. If Golden Rat really comes to take revenge as the old man said, should the mine continue to be mined? The family sent him to guard Qingping Mountain, and the main responsibility is to protect this fine iron ore vein. If the mining stops because of the monster, the loss will be the sparkling spirit stone. The change in his face was not concealed. When old man Zhou Chuan saw it, he immediately understood what he was worried about, and could not help but comfort him. "Don't worry, Xiaoju, this old man will explain this to you and the clan. Golden Rat, it's a second-tier high-grade monster, and it's beyond your ability to deal with it, so no one will look down on you." Thanks to the third grandfather for enlightening, but my grandnephew still has some doubts. Our Zhou family has been mining this fine iron ore for decades. Although many desert monsters have been attracted by the human breath to attack the miners before, no one has ever discovered it. Golden Rat, this monster. And the golden eating rat just now was clearly an adult monster. If it had been active in the iron ore veins before, it shouldn't have been exposed at all. Zhou Yang looked at the old man with a puzzled face, and slowly said the question he thought of just now. He knew that the old man was a second-order animal trainer. In terms of his understanding of monsters, except for the old patriarch, no one in the Zhou family could compare to this centenarian. Well, you're right, golden rat monsters have always liked to build their nests in metal veins, and our Zhou family has been mining this concentrated iron ore for decades. Rat exists, the elders of the family and Zhou Jian who explored the ore veins should not be able to find it, unless it migrated recently. The grandfather and grandson exclaimed at the same time, then looked at each other with joy in their eyes. That's right, as far as I know, if a monster like Golden Rat wants to be promoted to Tier 3, it needs to devour a lot of metals with different properties, and the beast that escaped must have migrated from another mine recently. Come here. The old man Zhou Chuan excitedly stretched out his hand and tugged at his beard, and shouted again and again with a glowing face. Zhou Yang wasn't much better either. Just after the old man's words were finished, he nodded again and again with a red face. Since the third grandfather said this, it must not be wrong, he just doesn't know where this golden eating rat was originally. How far is the mine from here? If it's not far, our Zhou family might make another big fortune. It's no wonder that the two are so happy, because the Zhou family has a clan rule since the ancestor Zhou Yuquan opened up the family. That is, the children of the Zhou family, as long as they find unowned mineral veins or natural spiritual veins in the boundless sand sea and report it to the family. It will continue until it is found that people are sitting or the ore resources are exhausted. If the situation this time is really as the two of them guessed, the golden rat migrated from another nearby undiscovered ore vein, then as long as they find that ore vein and report the location to the family, they can do it later. Lie down and collect dividends. In this case, how can you say that the two of them can be unhappy? But after all, both of them are immortal cultivators who have practiced for many years. Even if they are happy in their hearts, they will not jump like ordinary mortals. The demeanor of immortal cultivators should still be maintained. What's more, everything is just speculation by the two of them, and it has not really been confirmed. However, just when Zhou Yang calmed down and thought about how to find the possible ore vein, the old man Zhou Chuan suddenly looked at him with hesitation and said in a low voice, "That, Xiaoju, this old man, and how about you negotiate?" "Third grandpa, please say it." Zhou Yang replied in a conditioned reflex, then raised his head and looked at the old man in surprise. This is not the tone of the elder to the younger. When the old man looked at him like this, his face couldn't help blushing, and there was a hint of shame in his eyes, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "If the ore veins are really found, the old man can give this credit to you and let you enjoy that one. How about you give your second brother 3% from your share of dividends every year in the future?" This. Zhou Yang's expression changed, and Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com immediately understood what the old man meant. According to the family rules, if multiple people discover a ore vein at the same time, then multiple people will share the 10% of the family dividend, and then whoever dies, his share of the dividend will be owned by the family. The old man Zhou Chuan is over 100 years old. Even if Zhou Yang shares the dividend with him, he will not be able to get it for a few years. It is very likely that he may not even wait until the family develops and utilizes the ore vein. But if Zhou Yang alone takes the dividend, not to mention that Zhou Yang will be very likely to build a foundation in the future. Even if he fails to build a foundation in the future, at the age of 20, he can still eat dozens of dividends. Years. If it is calculated like this, even if Zhou Yang only takes 30% of his dividends every year to give to his elder brother Zhou Bao, the grandson of the old man Zhou Chuan, for the old man Zhou Quan's family, it is a big profit. It's just that elder Zhou Quan's actions, strictly speaking, are harming the interests of the family, a selfish behavior that harms the public and private, especially since he is the elder of the family. The old man Zhou Chuan also obviously knew that what he did was very bad. At this time, seeing Zhou Yang's face changed greatly and he didn't reply, his eyes were even more ashamed, but some beliefs in his heart still supported him to continue. The old man knows that it's not good for him to do this, but Xiaozhu, you have to be considerate of your second brother. Your second brother is only a low-quality spiritual root, and his parents have passed away. Once the old man sits down, he will provide for the old man alone. How hard is the whole family? The old man has lived for more than 100 years, and he has never done anything wrong to the family in his life, only this time, it is the old man who begs you. In the end, the old man was already in tears. In life, who is selfless? When an old man who had dedicated his life to his family for over 100 years was crying in front of him and begging for a younger generation who was the same age as his grandson regardless of his elder's face, Zhou Yang really couldn't refuse the old man's selfish request. It is human nature for an old man to want to leave a considerable legacy for his younger generation when he is about to perish. Even the harshest person can't be blamed for it. Especially, the old man didn't use his power to greedy the Mo family's property to support the younger generation, he just wanted the reward that originally belonged to him to be distributed normally. Third grandfather, rest assured, if I can really find a new mineral vein, as long as I, Zhou Yang, live for one day, I will definitely transfer the dividend that belongs to you to the second brother Zhou Bao, but I have to explain to you that once I am halfway through if you fall, or Zhou Bao's second brother will be reborn in the future, your share of dividends must be handed over to the family truthfully. Zhou Yang looked at the old man who was already in tears, and made a solemn promise. He didn't ask the old man to give the 2 more dividends. He couldn't take this money. The condition of agreeing to the old man was already playing a sideball on the edge of the clan rules. Thank you, Xiaozhu, thank you so much. No matter whether this can be done or not, the third grandfather will remember your kindness, and your second brother Zhou Bao will also remember your great kindness for the rest of your life. The old man excitedly, he grabbed Zhou Yang's arm tightly, and his voice was a little choked. For the old man Zhou Chuan, whose death is not far away, his biggest worry is the survival of his juniors after he sits down. He has taken care of his juniors over the years. Even if his juniors do not have spiritual qualifications, they can still be in the Zhou family. Had a good time inside. But once he passes away, without the support offered by his family, the quality of life of his younger generations will plummet in the future. If it is a generation or two, it is estimated that they will be reduced to no different from ordinary civilians. This is what he does not want. Scene. Now, with Zhou Yang's assurance, even if he passes away in the future, his descendants will rely on this ore vein for dividends, and at least the next few decades will not be too desolate. If in the next few decades, there will be a younger generation with spiritual roots in his descendants, it will be even better. So the old man Zhou Chuan is really grateful to Zhou Yang now, otherwise he wouldn't be so rude. Zhou Yang understood the excitement in the old man's heart, but the old man's actions made him a little dumbfounded. He couldn't help breaking free from the old man's grasping hands, and whispered helplessly, "Third Grandpa, calm down, you are if we want to thank you, we have to wait until we really find that ore vein, but don't be too busy to rejoice at the end, that would be a joke." When the old man said this, his face suddenly turned red, and he pulled his beard embarrassedly, and said with a shy smile, "He, Ziaju, what you said makes sense, it's the old man who lost his temper." Zhou Yang thought to himself that your old man was not just a simple gaffe, but he did not mention it again, but took the initiative to ask for advice. "Third Grandpa, you have a lot of knowledge, and I don't know if you are looking for that possible mineral vein. What's your opinion?" According to this old man's opinion, instead of the two of us roaming around in this boundless sea of sand, it is better to wait for the golden-eating rat to come to the door again. As long as it appears again, the old man will use the blood spirit. Plant a mark on it, and then we will wound it, let it escape back to its nest, and mark its nest through the mark induction. As you know, rat monsters' nests are generally deep underground. As long as they are injured outside, they will usually hide in their nests to recover. As long as we keep chasing the golden rat, it is located in the concentrated iron ore vein. If we can't hide here, we will habitually flee back to the original nest to recover. Are we afraid we won't be able to find a place by then? The old man Zhou Chuan is worthy of being an old man. Once he calmed down, he immediately thought of a way to make Zhou Yang clap his hands and applaud after hearing it. "Wonderful, Zhang is still old and hot, the third grandfather's method is good, let's do it." He clapped his palms with joy on his face and shouted loudly. He raised his hands in agreement with the old man's method. As the old man said, the sea of sand is endless. If it is just the two of them, the chances of finding a mineral vein that is unknown are too small. If the ore veins that Golden Rat originally hid were so easy to find, the seniors of the Zhou family who discovered the Qingpingshan iron ore concentrate would have discovered it long ago. Since you agree with the old man's method, then let's go back and prepare. The old man estimates that the beast needs to recover well, and it is impossible to do it within a month or two. This time is completely enough for the old man to go back and forth to the family. If you want to track the beast in the Sand Sea and not get lost, you have to bring the Shachuo beast. When Elder Zhou Chuan saw that Zhou Yang did not object to the method he proposed, he immediately stated the next step. Shachuo beast is a first-order high-grade monster domesticated by the Zhou family. This monster is said to have evolved from ordinary camels, but its physical strength and endurance are 10 times that of ordinary camels. It is a low-level practitioner walking in the desert. The best helper of the Zhou family is also the main transport force of the trade camel caravan under the cultivator family like the Zhou family. Shachuo beast also has a particularly powerful ability, that is, as long as it travels within 30 days, it can remember the route and return to the original path. This ability is simply a magical skill in the desert. It is a pity that Shachuo beast is difficult to reproduce, and because it often travels through the desert under heavy load, its lifespan is generally lower than that of normal first-order beasts. There are only 34 heads. These Shachuo beasts are all the background of the Zhou family. Ordinary Zhou family children can't lend them out for private use. The old man Zhou Chuan is also the only second-order animal trainer in the family because he has the identity of the Zhou family elder. Emboldened to say borrowed words. According to the plan, the old man Zhou Chuan left and returned to the oasis of Yuquan Lake, while Zhou Yang calmed the commotion of the miners, re-elected a new manager, and ordered him to organize manpower to resume mining. Since the old man Zhou Chuan said that the injury of the golden rat will not heal within a month or two, then the mining of iron concentrate must not be stopped during this period of time. As for the miners, when they choose to be miners, they are already prepared for death, and the Zhou family has always given deep care to the dead miners. Therefore, after Zhou Yang, the Master Immortal personally came forward to explain that the monsters had been driven away. The miners' emotions quickly stabilized and they resumed work one after another. More than a month later, the old man Zhou Chuan who returned to the family came to Qingping Mountain again with 2 Shachuo beasts. The people who came with him were Zhou Yang's elder brother Zhou Bao, who was also the relative of the old man Zhou Chuan. Sunday. I think about you, once I chase the beast out of the Qingping mountain area, there will be no family monks sitting here. If something happens, it will be very unfavorable for your future evaluation. It happens that your second brother is currently on vacation. Just let him come over to help you get off work. Seeing Zhou Yang looking at the two of them with a puzzled look on his face, the old man Zhou Chuan smiled and explained the reason, then lightly kicked his own grandson and gave him a hinting look. Zhou Bao ranked second in the Yuan character generation. He was in his 30s and 40s. His face was slightly dull and his skin was dark and rough. He looked like an old farmer in the fields. Floor. Although they are all of the Yuan generation, but because of the large age difference, and the reason why Zhou Bao followed the family camel caravan to run business everywhere after the age of 20, Zhou Yang has actually met this family brother more times since he was a child. It didn't get up 10 times, and there was no communication. Now that he saw the other party like this, he immediately understood the painstaking efforts of the old man Zhou Chuan better. It's really impossible for the third grandpa's family to have a good life. At this time, Zhou Bao got a hint from his grandfather, and quickly opened his mouth and said, "Ninth brother, Grandpa told me everything, if this time it can be done, you are the great benefactor of our family, although my second brother is low in cultivation. But running errands or something is not a problem, in the future, if you have any assignments, ninth brother, you can send a letter to the second brother." After speaking, he lowered his head and dared not look at Zhou Yang's handsome face. Zhou Yang is so dazzling. Even if he is about 2 weeks old, even if he has not been home all year round, Zhou Bao can often hear the name of this ninth brother from the elders and peers around him. At the age of 4, he practiced Qi. At the age of 7, at the age of 12 he practiced at the 4th level, at the age of 15, at the 5th level, at the age of 17, he practiced at the 6th level, and at the age of 20 he became a first-order craft refiner. Every time the elders talked about Zhou Yang, they were full of praise, and then they had to teach the younger generation around them a lesson, asking them to learn from this genius younger generation of the Zhou family. God knows how desperate and helpless Zhou Bao feels every time he hears the elders say this. He also wants to work hard, but his spiritual aptitude is only low grade, and his understanding is average. Even with his grandfather Zhou Chuan, he has barely broken through to the 4th level of Qi training. Reaching the 9th level of Qi training is unknown. In this case, he wouldn't even say he had the desire to compare with the 9th younger brother Zhou Yang, but he would have no confidence in looking at the 9th younger brother. In the world of immortals, strength is the most respected. Even if the cultivators of the same family are of the same generation and the strength is too different, no immortal cultivator will really think that if they are older, they will be able to surpass their own cultivation. Clan Equality Dialogue. Especially Zhou Bao, who has been running business with the caravan outside the family for a long time, has long seen the cruelty of the world of immortal cultivation, and has learned to fear the strong. As for Zhou Yang, who was able to make the old patriarch say the unicorn of the Zhou family, and his grandfather's words were full of admiration, in Zhou Bao's eyes now, he is definitely the kind of existence that needs his awe. In fact, it's not just Zhou Bao alone, the Zhou family's Yuan cultivator, except for a few people who are relatively familiar with Zhou Yang, almost all of them now have feelings for Zhou Yang, the 9th younger brother and 9th brother. Brother had a psychological shadow, and no one dared to treat this person as a peer anymore. People of their generation are destined to live under the shadow of Zhou Yang for the rest of their lives. Zhou Yang did not know that he had become the psychological shadow of his peers. Looking at Zhou Bao's performance in his eyes, he only thought that the other party was introverted and didn't care too much. After all, he doesn't have much friendship with Zhou Bao, and taking care of each other in the future is also on the face of the third grandfather, Zhou Chuan, and the situation between the two is destined to not be too much. So he just said a few polite words, and didn't say anything more. In fact, in the entire Zhou family's Yuan generation, Zhou Yang is also an outlier. Because of his past life memories, he has been precocious since he was a child. He doesn't like to play with people of his age, but prefers to hide in a secluded place and cultivate quietly. In addition to his good spiritual aptitude, he was able to achieve this level of cultivation at such a young age, and his contribution to this aspect also accounted for a large proportion. Children are playful and active, so how can they be quiet enough to meditate at a young age? It is not a person like Zhou Yang who has memories of his past life, and only those people who are naturally cold and don't know what fun is, can maintain a high level in childhood. Strength practice. And this kind of maverick behavior naturally made Zhou Yang's relationship with his peers become very weak, and he was even marginalized and isolated by those peers. When those peers grow up, understand the truth and apologize to him, this sense of alienation has already formed. Even if he doesn't care, those peers will be ashamed and reluctant to stay in front of him. The relationship will not improve much. This situation will only become more and more serious as his cultivation level gets higher and higher and his fame grows. So far, those of his peers can only look up at him, a genius clan brother, who is far away from them because of his cultivation, and has completely lost the courage to talk to him on an equal footing. In any case, the arrival of Zhou Bao, the clan brother, did help Zhou Yang a little. Although this clan brother is not very good, he is also a 4th level Qi immortal cultivator. With him here, Zhou Yang can safely hand over 10 mu of spiritual fields and some mine chores in Qingping Mountain. The other party took care of it. An Xin and the old man Zhou Chuan went to the mine to squat and wait for the arrival of the golden rat monster. At this time, the cruelty of the immortal world was revealed. Even if he knew that the coming of the golden rat would definitely cause the death of the miners in the mine, at the insistence of the old man Zhou Chuan, Zhou Yang's proposal to temporarily stop work and withdraw from the mine was directly rejected by the old man. Ruthlessly rejected. The old man not only ruthlessly rejected his proposal, but also gave him an education class sternly. Xiaozhu, you must remember that monks of my generation are most afraid of being soft-hearted. Whether it is today's mediocre mortal miners or family monks like this old man, as long as we abandon us, we can exchange for the strength of the family and allow the family to continue to inherit. Go down, then you should abandon us without hesitation. A gecko's broken tail can be reborn. As long as the family can pass it on, our broken tails will grow back on the next generation sooner or later. You are the hope of our Zhou family. If you can successfully build the foundation in the future, the position of the Zhou family's patriarch will be passed on to you. If you are merciful at that time and cause disaster, it will not only be you alone, but the entire family. Zhou family. The old man, who usually had a kind and amiable face, said these words, but his face was indescribably cold, and he was completely different. Zhou Yang knew that at this moment, the other party was no longer talking to him as a kind elder, but as a clan elder. As a child of the Xiaoxian family, everything must be based on the family's interests, and it must not cause huge losses to the family because of personal kindness. To be honest, he doesn't fully agree with this theory that the family's interests are supreme, but he also knows that this is the normal way of survival for all immortal cultivating families in this world. Moreover, although the old man Zhou Quan's approach seems cold and inhuman, it is actually the best choice to achieve his goal quickly. Monster beasts are not beasts, beasts only act on their instincts, and in addition to possessing the power of demonic energy, monsters also have spiritual intelligence. If they ordered the miners in the mine to withdraw and close the mine, the golden rat monster would definitely realize that something was wrong and would never reappear after finding this situation. Therefore, in order to lure this monster out, the miners must be used as human bait, and someone must sacrifice for it. Therefore, Zhou Yang didn't say anything more in the end, he could only acquiesce to what the old man Zhou Chuan did. The miners are definitely not allowed to know about the use of miners as human bait, so after making the decision, both Zhou Yang used the breath-holding technique to restrain their breath, and quietly hid in an unmanned branch in the mine to wait. Up. The waiting was torturous, because no one knew when the golden rat would come, and neither Zhou Yang nor Zhou Chuan dared to make any noise, let alone cultivating. In order to make the squatting go smoothly this time, the old man Zhou Chuan even prepared 2 bottles of the second-order spiritual elixir Bigudan in advance. During the Qi training period, the monks took 1 elixir, which could maintain the body for 7 days without having to eat any more. This compliance is 10 days. One afternoon 15 days later, when Zhou Yang was too bored, he took out the artifact refining book given by the old patriarch to study the art of refining the artifact. In the mine, which was originally full of miners banging and digging, a sound suddenly sounded. The miners screamed in horror. Ah! There are monsters, and the monsters killed people. Run, go, and ask the immortal master to exterminate the demon. The miners exclaimed, and the crying father and mother threw away the mining hose and other tools in their hands. They only hated that their father and mother had lost 2 legs and ran desperately to the outside of the mine. But no one found out that the master immortal they called had already appeared in the mine. As soon as Zhou Yang and Zhou Chuan heard the exclamations of the miners, they immediately put away the breath-holding technique and began to act. Instead of going with the miners to squeeze the narrow tunnel, they directly used the earth escape technique to bypass the miners and go straight to the scene of the incident. After a while, the 2 rushed to the murder scene of the golden eating rat and saw this vicious monster again. Take the blood as a guide, the blood spirit manifests, go. As soon as he saw the figure of the golden eating rat, the old man Zhou Chuan bit his tongue and opened his mouth to spit out a mouthful of blood essence to perform the blood spirit mark spell. I saw a flash of blood, and before Golden Rat could react, a mark suddenly appeared on his body. With Zhou Quan's 9th level Qi practice, he used the blood spirit mark spell. This mark could last on the Golden Rat for at least a day, and as long as the mark existed for a moment, as long as the distance between the 2 sides did not exceed 1,000 miles, Zhou Chuan would the old man can find the location of the Golden Rat at any time through the induction in the dark. And Golden Rat obviously doesn't know what this seemingly inconspicuous mark represents. When it was drenched in blood, it was really startled, thinking that the human who beat him badly last time had performed some kind of sorcery on him. When he found that the mark was on his back and didn't hurt him in the slightest, his hair was swept away, and a humanistic sarcasm flashed in the Scarlet Mouse's eyes, and he grinned at Zhou Yang and the 2. Squeak! There was a sharp rat call from its mouth, and the figure plunged into the ground in an instant, disappearing from the sight of Zhou Yang and the 2 of them. What a cunning beast! You have learned to be smart, but you are still a little more tender if you want to play around in front of this old man. Just as Zhou Yang was ready to sacrifice the silver gang shield magic weapon, and was concentrating on guarding against the attack of the golden eating rat, the old man Zhou Chuan seemed to sense something and revealed the whereabouts of the beast with a low voice. It turns out that Golden Rat has been afraid of the old man's pointing to the ground into steel after the last time he suffered a loss. Trick! It seemed to be hiding and preparing to sneak attack on the 2 of them, but in fact it quietly escaped to the exit of the mine, chasing and killing the miners who escaped. Let's go to the exit of the mine. The old man shouted lowly, moved his body, put away his gourd and sledgehammer, and rushed towards the exit of the mine. Zhou Yang, who knew it later, saw this, and quickly followed after him. At the exit of the mine, the miners who had just escaped had no time to rejoice when they saw a black mouse the size of a wolf dog burrowing out of the ground, and it opened its mouth and bit the nearest people. Run! The sudden change stunned many miners, and then someone shouted loudly, and everyone suddenly fled wildly in all directions like a frightened sparrow. How could these 2-legged mortals outrun 4-legged monsters? I saw a huge black shadow on the ground rushing to the left and right, and the miners who fled screamed like wheat and collapsed in pieces. In just 10 breaths, dozens of miners fell. Nearly half. If it goes on like this, in less than a minute at most, these dozens of miners will all die under the claws of the Golden Rat. Fortunately, this did not happen. When the golden rat jumped to the ground and started killing, Zhou Yang and Zhou Chuan, who found something wrong, finally arrived on the ground. Refers to the ground into steel. Refers to the ground into steel. The two looked at the shadow that was chasing the miners all over the ground, and invariably used the pointing to the ground into steel spell to block the ground. The difference is that the old man Zhou Chuan released the spells he had learned, while Zhou Yang used the second-order talisman that the old man Zhou Chuan gave him. This second-order talisman with the spell of fingering the ground into steel was drawn by the third elder of the Zhou family with the character Light, and the second-order high-grade talisman maker Zhou Dan personally painted it. It was specially asked for this fifth brother. At this time, the two pointing to the ground into steel spells were used together, instantly turning the soil and rocks within hundreds of square meters around Golden Rat into refined steel, making its escape from the ground useless. Then, before it could react from this sudden change, the old man Zhou Quan's gourd sledgehammer had already smashed into its head. Red Flame Sword, go! Zhou Yang let out a low sigh without looking at it, and decisively sacrificed the second-tier mid-grade flying sword Red Flame Sword that his father gave him on his 15th birthday. I saw a flash of fire, and the scarlet flame sword that Zhou Yang sacrificed, on the contrary, slashed the body of the golden-eating mouse who wanted to escape. However, just like the old man Zhou Chuan said at the beginning, the golden rat fur is tough and unbreakable unless it is a second-tier high-grade magic weapon. The scarlet flame sword of the second-tier middle grade slashed on it, but it only slightly cut off a wisp of mouse hair, leaving a shallow white mark on it, which could not hurt its real body at all. However, Zhou Yang was not discouraged by this, because with this sword, he just wanted to contain the golden rat and create a chance for the old man Zhou Quan's gourd sledgehammer. Sure enough, after being stopped by his sword, the golden rat inevitably slowed down a bit, and it was this one blow that caused the gourd sledgehammer that was chasing after him to smash heavily on its back. Squeak! With a heavy hammer, the golden-eating rat fell to the ground with a scream, spitting out blood, even with some viscera fragments. The word sorry in the old man Zhou Quan's sorry hammer instrument is not for nothing. Once hit by this instrument, it will activate the magical power of sorry in the instrument, forming a wave. The powerful shock force causes secondary damage to the enemy. Golden rat because of the growth of devoured metal. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The fur and bones are very tough and hard, and it is difficult to hurt it with ordinary magic tools. But no matter how strong its body defense is, its internal organs cannot always be as hard as metal. After the shock force inspired by the unfortunate magical power fell on it, it instantly caused great damage to its internal organs, forming a serious internal injury. This is the second time it has fallen under the same trick. It's amazing, the third grandpa is really old and strong. Old and stronger, Zhang is still old and hot. Zhou Yang took back the flying sword and flattered the old man with admiration on his face. Of course, he is not completely flattering. The strength of the old man is indeed much stronger than him. After all, even if the difference in magic tools is not considered, the two people's cultivations are still 3 layers apart. One is the 6th layer in the middle stage of Qi training. One is the 9th floor in the late stage of Qi training. And to be able to get such praise from him, the first person in the younger generation of the Zhou family, even if he knew that his words were boasting and exaggerating, the old man Zhou Chuan couldn't help but feel proud for a while. He couldn't help but stroke his beard and said with a smile, "He, Ziaju, you've won the prize. This old man is just relying on your age to grow you a few years old. After another 10 or 8 years, Ziaju's cultivation base will improve, and then you will clean up these evil beasts. It must be within reach. Then I'll borrow the third grandpa's auspicious words. The grandnephew will definitely cultivate with the third grandpa as the goal." Zhou Yang smiled slightly and accepted the old man's compliment unceremoniously. The two of them are touting each other here, and no one cares about the seriously injured golden rat. Until golden rat vomited blood all the way, dragged his severely injured body and ran out of the influence range of the pointing to the ground into steel spell, and after escaping into the ground and disappearing, the two of them looked at each other and smiled, like a fox who stole a chicken, with a smile on their faces. Flowers out.